Welcome to a financial planning podcast with a down-to-earth vibe. Sasquatch listens while asking AI how to cook up an apple pie. This is Through the Pines. Our advisors for this episode, we welcome back Rex Baxter and Brandon Smith with planwithbaxter.com. They are the 2023, 24, and 25 Forbes Best in State Wealth Management Teams for Utah, along with the Advisor Hub Fastest Growing Advisors to Watch Under $1 billion and the receivers of the Ameriprise Client Experience Award, which means they know exactly what they are doing, and they can be reached 24/7 at planwithbaxter.com. All right, let's dive into creating a FIRE scenario for your finances. What is it and what does it mean? The Financial Independence Retire Early movement is a strategy for achieving financial freedom, allowing individuals of any age to retire early and work optionally, and this is important, optionally, or pursue passions without financial stress. FIRE involves accumulating enough wealth to cover living expenses indefinitely, typically through a combination of high savings rates, strategic investing, and intentional lifestyle choices. Now, Rex, before we dive in too deep here and go over some of the levels of FIRE, I think one of the major hurdles to this is just that it takes so long to build wealth.
It does take a long time to build wealth.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Thanks for having us on your show.
Yeah.
First. Appreciate that. I love it when I hear a brand new acronym like FIRE and it's all of a sudden a movement.
But it's like, well, I teach people to do this every day.
I didn't realize FIRE is a new movement.
Yes.
So, I mean, it depends.
Brandon should know. It's big amongst the millennials.
Is it?
Yeah. He's like, I don't know.
All right.
I think this is the first time Brandon's heard of it, probably too.
Well, I mean, I've heard the description. This is FIRE.
Not the same thing.
Oh,
not the same thing. Yeah.
Well,
I've heard in a crowded
No,
theater.
no, not the same.
screamed
Yeah,
fire.
No,
not the same.
you're not supposed to do
Or
that.
that you're not supposed to scream FIRE.
So, but FIRE levels, so that let's all get on the same page then.
Okay.
So lean FIRE, Rex, is a minimalist lifestyle where you can pull that enough money, like you can pull $20,000 to $40,000 a year and live and be okay with that.
Okay.
Fat FIRE, comfortable.
Is that with the PH?
It should be, but it's, fat FIRE, comfortable or luxurious-ish, depending on where you live, is $80,000 plus a year. I like this one. This next one is fantastic. Barista FIRE. Barista FIRE is partial independence with part-time work to supplement your income. And then Coast FIRE is saving enough early in life to let investments grow without additional contributions.
This is real. Where have you heard? Is it, how many?
The internet
times?
gave me these answers,
Okay.
and so we're going to talk with financial planners to compare with the reality of what a financial planner will say.
I love marketing. Marketing is great.
good.
Marketing's the best.
This is what it
somebody's marketing ploy.
This is what it feels like to be a client and be like, what? Like, what kind of acronyms? What when you're anyway.
But I do get a lot of people. What was a lot of younger individuals
Lean FIRE.
that would lean into Coast
FIRE, yeah. How much can I put away now and then just let it ride?
Right. How do I get to the point where I have passive income?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So now it says here, Rex, FIRE is achievable at any age, like 3. I don't know.
Well, if you inherit it, 3,
inherit it, yeah.
Right. Trust fund babies.
That's true. Though, excuse me, the approach varies. So younger individuals have time to leverage compounding. Mid-career workers can accelerate savings with higher incomes, and older adults can refine plans to bridge an early retirement. So what does it take to achieve FIRE? Strategic blend of income optimization, expense reduction, investing, and lifestyle designed to maximize your wealth so that you can retire early, right? Become financially independent. So number 1, calculate your FIRE number. Rex, have you done this for people where you say, okay, if you want to live, or this is probably what you do every day, you want to live off $40,000 to $80,000 a year, here's how much you're going to need.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't call FIRE, but
Yeah.
we calculate a number with a lot of our clients and say, look, if you're wanting to retire at age 55, right? Our target is to have X amount in retirement focused assets. And then we break down the cash flow and say X amount of your income is going to be covered through these assets. Social Security kick in at a certain age, whether it's 62 or 70 or whatever the age is. You may have this additional rental income, and that'll kick in so much to the income. We may have a future inheritance, or we may need to downsize the house in year 10 of retirement, so we get a cash infusion into those assets, right? But yeah, we run through all of those different issues and come up with kind of a target that this is where we're targeting to try and have you by this certain age, because that will sustain your current living pattern over your projected lifetime.
Now, they did use numbers that we've used in a previous podcast. So they suggest that
So we came up with it first.
In order to find, this is like an industry standard. So yeah, I'm assuming to find your lifestyle, typically 25 times your annual expenses, so that you can withdraw 4% a year. So if you want to make 40,000, then you need about $1 million in the bank, or 33 times it would be a 3% withdrawal. So you need like 1.32 in the bank. And this accounts for inflation and longevity. What are some factors that can help you get that? But you would also, if you want to maybe hit that FIRE number in your late 30s or mid 40s, would that still work, I guess?
Certainly anything can work, right? As far as hitting a FIRE number in your 30s or 40s takes significant savings, probably taking significant risk, probably starting a business that is wildly successful and being able to have an exit strategy out of that business so that you have massive capital. If you're going to do something that early, or you are going to inherit a fair amount of money, something along those lines. And so that's a pretty young age, because then you've got 60 years of life that you're trying to sustain, or have the ability to sustain. Not saying that you won't work or won't earn additional money or have additional financial projects that you work on, but you need that amount of capital to sustain you for 60 years and not draw that down for that next project that you want to take on, as that next passion. Because if you spend that money on that next passion, you no longer have that ball of wax that's going to sustain you. So therefore you're no longer in that FIRE mode. Right? I just did air quotes.
You did. I saw him. I don't know if the camera picked up on it.
I don't think so.
But also, if you're used to, can you, if you're like, oh, I could totally live off 40,000 a year for the rest of my life, and then 5 years later, you're like, I cannot live off 40,000. Like, I'm going to need more money.
So it's tricky, right? Because 40,000 with the cost of inflation will become, 60,000, 80,000. And if somebody had retired on 40,000 in 2020, and all of a sudden you went through a series of 8 or 9% inflation and then 6% inflation and so forth, that 40 became 50 really fast, faster than maybe your money grew to that 50 to compound that. So you have to be careful on those estimates and projections. But I also think a lot of times, you use the 25 times number, or the 4% distribution rate number, and generally that's one stool of a three, or one leg of a three-legged stool, right? Sorry about that.
Four-legged, three-legged, we're still standing.
Stool, we're on a 10-legged stool. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's got 3 legs, and I think it's a stool.
Okay.
And so that 4% typically makes up 1 or 2 of those legs. Normally you have Social Security that makes up one of those legs, and lots of times you have either rental or real estate income, or a pension, or typically you have something else that makes up that other third leg. And so it's not as if your pool of money needs to make up the entire life stool for your entire life, because you're going to have these other legs kick in at different ages.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Brandon, anything else on calculating your FIRE number?
Well, it's really easy to save up $1 million with time, right? If you got 40 years, grow it at 8%, it only takes $287 a month, and you end with $1 million, right? Saving up to $1 million is really, really easy with time. Why? Because you don't have to save all the dollars, right? The compound interest does the vast majority of the heavy lifting for you. That changes if you're trying to get $1 million by the age of 30.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's not a lot of compound interest in that. You're doing most of the heavy lifting on that. You need to earn that and have that as surplus and save that to get there. And so I was in my younger years, I was very intrigued by that idea, right? Of just like sacrificing hard, push, and saving all of that, building that up. But personally, I don't know. I think if you can find purpose and enjoyment in your work, that's way better because not only does it give you time, not only does it give you the ability to make those memories early on and throughout life, but then it also creates that very sustainable, very easy to accomplish financial hurdle. Whereas so often it seems like, especially younger people are like, all right, how do I retire tomorrow? It's like, that's not the goal. Like, why are we trying to retire? Why do we want to just not work? So just find something that's worthwhile doing.
This is a good point. And because FIRE is financially independent, retire early, I feel like what the meaning behind it is so that I am not forced to work a job I don't want to do. In other words, I can go work. It's just not, I can go do what I want to do instead of what I have to do to make the money. So if I have to work this job that I don't necessarily love, but I make a good money at, I can, like this next step says, save a savings rate of 50 to 70. How many people save 50 to 70% of their income? I mean, that's so much. You have to cut expenses incredibly. And so, but that's one of the suggestions here. And that might have to be the sacrifice if that's truly what you want to do, because it's an insane savings rate, right?
Well, especially when 30% go to different kinds of taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in high income. And so then you've only got 70% left and you're saying, I'm going to save 100% of that. Where do I live?
Or 50% of that. So you got 20% to live off of?
I'm a boomerang kid, so I bounce back into my parents' basement. So, I mean, I think I love the fact of being financially independent. I love the fact of retiring early so I have choices, or having the ability to retire early. I may not retire early because I have the passion to continue to do what I want to do.
Right.
But I want the flexibility to retire early so it's on my terms.
Yeah.
And I love that concept. And I really promote that a lot with a lot of our clients, that at some age we want that financial independence. Now, for some people it is 65 or 67. Sometimes it's 74, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's older. But for a lot of our clients, I'm finding that it's 62 or 60 or 55, or, we've had some clients be able to be in that position in their early 50s or late 40s. It's highly uncommon to be able to get there by the time you're 30 or 40. And a lot of that is all of the sacrifices you have to make, not just financial sacrifices, but a lot of times you're married by the time you're 30 or 40. You may have kids by the time you're 40. If you had a child when you're 25, right, then they're 15 years old. And so does that mean that you missed their entire childhood? That you didn't have time because you're so focused on working and saving, you didn't have time to go camping. You didn't have time to take them to the beach to a coast.
Or do sports.
Sports. You didn't have time to attend their games, or heaven forbid, you couldn't go to their dance review. Oh, right?
The nerve.
So, I mean, it's not just the financial sacrifices of saving, but it's the life experience sacrifices that you're having to give up. And it's difficult to balance the sacrifices of when your kids are young versus the sacrifices of you working longer, and the sacrifices of you maybe not traveling as much as you want when you're 50 or 60, right? And they're both sacrifices. It's just choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
Choose which one you want.
Yeah. Brandon, anything on that? On saving that much money, which is insane, like 50 to 70% of your income?
I thoroughly agree with a very holistic view and taking a very honest approach and being honest with yourself and saying, when I'm 90 years old looking back on life, what do I want this all to look like? And then following that. And also recognizing that humans have a tendency to be short-sighted, and recognizing that, hey, like, just, I've spoken with plenty of people who say, hey, my kids are young, we are going to make all the memories, forget retirement today, right? I'll do like the 401k in the match, but everything else, we'll figure it out when we get there. And I don't know that that's a great approach, right? Because A, it puts yourself in a very difficult spot down the road, but then B, I worry that leaves some sort of lingering fear in the back of your mind, like, hey, I don't even know how I'm going to pull this out, right? And so I for me personally, I think it's making sure that you're sustainable, making sure that you're on track for retirement. But then also, I guess I don't personally agree with the idea of just like sacrificing everything to, like, let's make sure we've got an emergency fund, we've got our retirement in check, we've got our insurances taken care of, and then let's make memories today and make sure we can continue to make memories in retirement and blend that, rather than having all the experiences today and nothing later, or saving and having nothing today and tons of money later. The change just doesn't make sense to me, but that's a personal preference, right? And as a financial advisor, I can help you do either one, either of the three scenarios. It just, personally, I kind of like to blend it.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to go through an exercise of somebody that comes to you and they're 25 years old, 22 years old, whatever the age is, and they say, I want to be a coastal fire.
Good, Rex. You're learning.
You're learning.
By the time I'm 35.
Yeah.
Now, as my financial advisor, my third party unbiased view, please write my epitaph at age 90 as to what it would be if I sacrificed everything from now until I'm 35 or 40. And it's going to sound like Scrooge's life before he had the three ghost epiphany, right? Because
maybe
he
not, but
probably doesn't have, that person probably doesn't have a relationship with their kids. Very, very likely may have been divorced a time or two.
Oh, jeez.
Right?
Getting
Very
dark now.
likely, doesn't have other any lasting relationships with friends or family, because they're so focused on and have tunnel vision on this savings and work lifestyle to try and get there by 35 that they have to give all of that up in order to try and get to that number. And for some people, that may be worth it. That may be what they want.
Yeah.
And it's not my job or role to tell them it's not, right? My job or role is to tell them the pros and cons of making those decisions.
And they'll likely be divorced.
And
Just kidding.
yeah, I mean, it's a possibility, right? And so, or maybe they're married and they have no kids, right? And so they and maybe that's what they want.
And that's more who are promoting FIRE on the socials. Are young couples who want to wait to have kids, so they're going to build their Airbnb business or their social media business or whatever, and they're selling a product online of some kind, and they're going to make as much money as they can, be frugal as they can, and save as much until age 35 before they start their family, and then live in the FIRE mode.
And they could do that, right? I mean, they absolutely could do that, and you still have a couple of good birthing years left in there, or you can freeze your eggs, or whatever you want to do, right? And you can have your family later, and you can absolutely do that, right? And so it's just a matter of recognizing what sacrifices might you have to make, which would be having kids later in life. And so what does that look like? All of a sudden you're 60 when they're going to prom, or you're 70 when they're going to prom. Yeah. And so are you still going to have the same vibrancy and energy to go through some of those stages of life at that age versus a younger age? And if that's what you want, absolutely, let's figure it out. Let's figure out a way to do that, and we will help you with that. But we just want to make sure you're making good, educated decisions, and that you've weighed out the pros and cons, and you've thought through this thoroughly before you make that decision. Sometimes, as younger individuals, we jump before we think, right?
What?
I know.
I personally love being an older dad, by the way, and my only regret would be not starting a little bit earlier just to have more kids. Because it was like a little late. So it's like, well, if we get 2 out now, we're doing pretty good, Yeah. But if 3 or 4 would have been nice. So a few years earlier would have been.
7's great.
Oh man, 7. 7 is another level.
7.
Yeah. So actionable steps for 6, 7. Actionable steps for any age. And correct any of these, but I think this is just good wealth building advice in general. So it says young adults could or should, if they want to reach FIRE, cut major expenses. Well, this is like housing, rent smaller places. house hack, like renting rooms or something, like if you're getting crazy. Transportation, instead of buying a car, using public transit, this kind of a thing. Mid-career, leverage peak earning years to save aggressively, negotiate raises, pursue promotions. These are just good ideas anyway. Potentially starting a side hustle like consulting with your business. Redirect bonuses to investments, so saving your bonuses instead of spending them. Pre-retirees, downsizing your home potentially or relocating to lower cost areas, using catch-up contributions in retirement accounts. And a favorite of Brandon's, automate your savings so that it just comes out, automatically, and you're on track. Yeah, thoughts on those?
Yeah, I think those are all really good, tools to use. And I guess the question comes down to how do we use the tools, and to what level do we use the tools, and finding that balance. And ultimately, I think that's what truly, I think that's our job as a financial advisor, is when we sit down with people and say, this is what your life costs today, and is it sustainable, or do we need to make some minor changes to make sure it's sustainable, or are you saving too much? And we have plenty of clients who save too much, right? And Rex disagrees, just but they say that they're living in they maybe have some tension in their marriage because they both want things that neither of them can buy, and yet they're saving so much that they're going to have way more than they need in retirement. And it's like, well, is that the right balance? And so I think really the benefit of working with a financial advisor is we've got all these tools. We can utilize these tools, but we can really help you understand, how much pressure do we need to apply today or take off today in order to make sure that we can kind of see the future of your life financially anyway, and say, all right, how are we doing? Do we need to apply more or take pressure off?
I think these are fantastic questions that I wish more people would ask and entertain in their early 20s. Because I think they're fantastic. And I think that people should look at that and say, it's easier to change in those 20s before you have all the responsibilities already in tow and your lifestyle is already used to all those expenses. It's hard to go back. It's easy to make it on the onset as far as the change. And so if people would ask, boy, do I really need this big of a house when I'm 25, right? Or is there a cheaper way to live? Can I, a lot of times, and people will poke holes in this as well, but we let our kids live in our house while they're going to school so that they don't have the housing expense while they're going to school, or as long as they're working full-time and being productive and saving towards a house to a significant level. And so I think we have another podcast on adults raising adults.
Yes,
but,
we do.
I don't remember what we called it, but it's something like that.
That would have been a good name.
Adults raising. It's funding or financial your adult children and how your finances affect your adult children, and should you give them money, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are ways to cut back on those expenses as long as you're working towards that goal. And I think that's really wise, because if you're never in the habit of living on that lifestyle, and you're in the habit of minimalization and living on, frugality, things like that, then it's a lot easier to get joy out of spending an extra $500 as opposed to the pain of cutting back $500. Those are not equal in life. At all.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one, Rex, this is a good one.
I'm excited.
Investing aggressively and wisely. So
aggressively and
wisely. So that's where I know this might be a little, what does that mean? So according to AI, investments grow your strategies. Now they use the savings for your FIRE number. If you invest in the stock market, they suggest historical 7% real return after inflation. Diversification and low fees are key. It says actionable steps for any age. So young adults should start with using their tax advantage accounts like Roth IRAs, 401ks, etc., and investing in low cost index funds, they suggest, for long-term growth. Mid-career, max out 401ks, IRAs, SHAs, and explore real estate potentially as or dividend stocks for passive income. And then pre-retirees shift to a balanced portfolio, potentially 60% stocks, 40% bonds, to reduce risk while still growing wealth. Consider annuities potentially for guaranteed income, and then use robo-advisors So, yes, thoughts, Rex, on using investments, obviously, wisely. And they said 7% aggressive.
Well, they're saying 7 net of inflation.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're my guess is that they're assuming inflation's running 3%. And so they're saying the stock market will give you 10, you're getting net 7.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is where I think they're coming out from that. I think being aggressive when you're younger is smart. I think paying attention to your net in your pocket return is important. And so you net out your expenses, and it's what you keep that is important. And so I think keeping your expense, cost down is important, but you also need to look at what value you're getting for the expenses paid, right? Are they helping you make better decisions, not only with your investments, but also just with all of your finances? Do they understand you and they can help you make better decisions during emotional times? Because robo-advisors aren't going to be able to do that.
No, and they said robo-advisors for hands-off investing or micro-investing apps like Acorn for beginners, maybe, but you're going to need a planner.
At some point you got to tie it all together.
Right.
And again, it comes back to you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what questions you should be asking at different points in time, which is why we did a decade podcast for each decade of your life to try and help you through asking some of those questions. And so I think investing aggressively, especially when you're younger, is smart, right? I think you should be doing that. Mm-hmm. But you better have your other boxes checked, right? You should have your insurance boxes checked. You should have your emergency fund box checked, right? And so you should have these other boxes checked before we go into the investing aggressively, because all of those things can derail the best laid plan.
We have a full checklist, Brandon. A podcast on which ones you should have checked and sort of the order.
Yeah.
So, which is good too. Thoughts on the investing aggressively, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it's very important that you're conscious and you understand the risks that you're taking when you're investing, because Rex and I can sit here and say, hey, when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you should be more aggressive and let's build this portfolio out. But until you understand, like that's great, right? And that works out well when we're doing our annual review or semi-annual review and it's grown really well. But then when the market takes a deep dip, which it will, eventually, are you still comfortable enough to be able to get through that? Right? Because those are the people that get hurt in the deep recessions, are the ones that don't understand what's going on and panic when things get a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. And so I think investing aggressively and wisely, it's good they had the and wisely caveat, because not only is it usually the best thing to be more aggressive when you're young, it's also important that you understand why and what we're doing and how we plan for the downturns and how to get through those.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next thing we have to do if we want to become financially independent and retire early is control costs. And a big cost, which we did an entire podcast on, so you can go listen to this, is how health helps with your wealth, but is optimize healthcare costs. And so healthcare is a major fire expense, with out-of-pocket costs averaging $13,000 a year to $315,000 needed for a couple in retirement. So proactive health management and financial tools like HSAs are essential, Rex.
They are essential, and healthcare is a major expense all throughout retirement. And you never know when that's going to hit, so you better be prepared well for that. I always on our podcast mention that, one of the healthcare issues that people don't think about is dental care in retirement, because it's not covered by any other insurances. And unfortunately, teeth are bone and they deteriorate over time. And so when you get into your 70s and 80s, you're going to have some bigger expenses. And so you better prepare for that. Yeah. But that's one of those early checklist boxes that we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And so, we talk about HSAs and health savings accounts, and you have to have a high deductible healthcare plan. And if you're prone to major healthcare issues in your younger years, it may not make sense to be in a high deductible healthcare plan. You may want an HMO or a PPO, that's essentially a lower deductible, higher premium care plan that's going to have higher coverage and higher benefits to take care of you, so that the healthcare expenses are mitigated during your earlier years, but then we can't save in an HSA. We can't maximize that savings program out. And so we've got to be able to balance out your family history and your healthcare needs as to what kind of program is best for you today, in addition to saving for those healthcare needs down the road. And that's definitely a killer of the FIRE plan.
For sure. Yeah. Brandon, thoughts?
Water right on it.
Oh boy. Okay. We brought you because
I'm the fire extinguisher.
You are the
Let's
fire
be honest.
extinguisher. Yes. We need to hear sometimes. So this is good.
One thing on healthcare is a lot of healthcare costs as it's set up today, and healthcare can always change, but a lot is dependent on your income. And so if you're not on an employer plan, most times you find yourself on the marketplace buying one of those plans, which are subsidized with, they're subsidized depending on your income that you're showing. And so if we've got a lot of pre-tax accounts, that we're pulling, like traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks that we're pulling money out of, we're recognizing that as income. And that can be really bad. If we've got non-qualified accounts generating a lot of income that way, that can impact that. And so, but if we've got a bunch of money in Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, depending on age and there's some other factors, but we can pull money out of there completely tax-free. And so we can still be living on a higher lifestyle, but still show income be lower. And so it's those types of planning, right? That, hey, maybe we're in a higher tax bracket now, but we still want to do a Roth because we want to control our income in these first few years of retirement because we're retiring early and we won't be able to get on Medicare. And so controlling where money is coming from to try and influence our health insurance expenses is a really, really good idea.
Yeah. Some of the actionable steps here, according to the AI on optimizing healthcare for young adults would be, like you said, Rex, to enroll high deductible health plans, potentially to access HSAs and contribute the max each year. Mid-career, prioritize preventative care, annual checkups. And this is something I talked about before. I'm like, man, when I was in my 30s, there was no way I was going to a doctor unless like I broke something. Like there's just not,
right.
I just don't think about it. But if you get in the habit of doing that in your 30s, because it's not mandated. You don't have to do it. Now, some insurance groups will give you a discount or give you cash back if you go every year, just so you can catch stuff early because the insurance company wants to catch yours. You don't have to pay as much. But if you can get in the habit of that, that'll save you long term. If you can just catch anything early on, it's beneficial. So do that. Also, research long-term care insurance in your 40s and 50s for lower premiums, and then pre-retirees estimate the Medicare costs, and the plan for gaps in that, and self-fund for long-term care if need to by buying hybrid policies. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I think a lot of the preventative care and insurance companies compensating you or rewarding you for taking care of yourself, I think that's a newer phenomenon in the industry, meaning the last decade or 15 years or so that's picked up a little bit. It definitely saves the insurance companies money, so they definitely have a vested interest in that because they know it costs them more to pay out. And it's interesting that they finally have come to that realization.
Like, well, we want you to be healthy, actually.
We want you to never make a claim. you know, and so they're finally using a carrot to incentivize that, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Picking up long-term care insurance in your 40s, most of the times when I've priced that out, that's pretty young. Because you've got to pay premiums on that for the next, probably 40 years.
Oh yeah.
For a long time, and you're losing a lot of that compounding for retirement for other goals.
You could self-insure probably with that, right?
And so you might be able to. You might be able to do that same amount and self-insure. Or again, some of those hybrid policies. A lot of times, I lean towards those hybrid policies. Because if we don't use it for long-term care, at least we have a life insurance policy attached to it, to where those funds then go to a spouse or to kids or to a passion, to whatever that is that's important to you. And so a lot of times I lean towards those more so than long-term care. It's long-term care is one of those emotional purchases for people that can be fairly easy for advisors to sell, because everybody's scared of not being taken care of when they're sick and old.
Yeah.
And so, they buy these policies, and yet the average long-term care stay is typically less than 18 months.
Whew.
And a
That's
lot of
short.
these policies don't
much
kick
shorter
in.
than I thought. So
Yeah, unless it's, and there's certainly, so this takes into account everybody, right? So it does take into account Alzheimer's and dementia and some of these mental issues that sometimes can last with you for a decade or for 2 decades. However, most long-term care policies also cap out, right? Typically it'll kick in for 2 years or for 4 years, different time periods. And lots of times they don't kick in for the first 90 days or so. And so, you really need to understand those policies. I always comment with our clients that of all the products that we deal with, right? We deal with stocks and bonds and mutual funds and unit investment trusts and exchange trade funds. We deal with hedge funds and private equity and managed futures and derivatives and a lot of different kinds of things out there. But I'm not sure there's anything more complex than insurance-based policies. Whether that's annuities, whether it's long-term care, whether it's life insurance, I'm not sure there's anything more complex than insurance-based policies.
And I love bringing up my comedian friends because they crack great jokes. And a joke that I heard last night was this guy who was going to work for Procter and Gamble, and he was getting feedback on if this was a good idea. And he's like, "That's a boring job. I just fell asleep between the words Procter and Gamble." And it's like, yeah, I just fell asleep between the word insurance and whatever. Like, who wants to sit and study these insurance policies all day long to find out all the intricacies of these? Not a lot of people, right? If that's not your job, it's a lot of work. So it's like, go to a professional.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the most mundane exams that I had to take.
I did pass that test too. Oh my God,
I remember that. You did take that.
I did take that test. Oh,
yeah, it's. I mean,
officially sell life insurance. What was I thinking?
Yeah, life insurance is one of those things that's critically important. We want to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of coverage. Too frequent, we see people either overinsured or underinsured in different areas of their life. However, I am not an insurance-centric advisor. To me, it's a necessity that we've got to have, and we need to check those boxes, but it is not a cure-all. It does not cure all of the goals, and it's not the answer to all of your goals that you're trying to achieve. There's a lot of pitfalls, a lot of hidden pitfalls that you need to be aware of. So,
and that's what I'd point out too, is, people buy these and they feel really safe with them, but then you don't realize, wow, there's a cap on the benefits. There's a cap on the dollar amount. There's a cap on the year. Sometimes there's a cap. And then beyond that, they don't realize, wow, the insurance company can just start increasing premiums.
Right. And double my premium in 5 years.
Right. And so you've got to really be careful. I agree that a lot of times those aren't the cure-all. Works really well as a cure-all? Lots and lots of money. Right. And I say that as almost as a joke, but the reality is if we can take that and redirect it and get good competitive rates of return and build a really significant nest egg, that gets us through a lot, and it has a lot fewer catches than insurance policies with all the fine print on them,
and maybe more fun.
Well, yeah, that, and it's more flexible, right? Like if you have a long-term care policy and all of a sudden a spouse dies prematurely, you're like, dang it, but whereas if you've got a really good sized investment account, we can shift, we can redirect, we can be flexible, we can pivot a lot easier than insurance contracts. And again, I'm not saying insurance is bad. I agree with Rex, right? Sometimes it really does make sense. And there are some insurances, as we've recently recorded a very, insurance-centric almost podcast, right? About talking about the various insurances that are important to have. Insurance is important, but it's also important to accumulate wealth. Because ultimately accumulating wealth provides a lot more stability than just trying to buy a bazillion insurance policies.
Okay. Well, part of the the financial independent, retire early lifestyle is designing a purposeful life. And we'll get to that after we get some more numbers from our friend Brandon. What do we got?
We got some good numbers.
Good. I hate crappy ones.
The best numbers.
So, the best. These are the best s'more numbers ever.
Huge numbers.
Yeah. So the S&P 500.
Yeah.
We hear that frequently on the radio and all sorts of different places. What is it? It's an index of the largest U.S. based.
Let me guess, 500.
Yep. Yeah, give or take.
495
yeah.
right now.
It fluctuates.
It's not allowed. It's called the 500.
Roughly, they should call it the roughly S&P 500. But roughly the 500 largest U.S. based companies, right? And we track that because people want to know, hey, how is the U.S. market doing?
Yeah.
One thing that is lesser known is that the S&P 500. If you go out and you have $500 and you buy an S&P 500 fund with your $500, a lot of people think I'm going to have $1 in each of those 500 companies.
Okay.
Not the
Split
case.
evenly.
Yeah, right. That's not the case. In fact, 10 of the largest stocks in the S&P 500, because it is capitalization weighted. So the bigger companies have a bigger share of the S&P 500. And it's got, and that, for a long time was fairly moderate, like that worked pretty well and made a lot of sense. But we've actually seen a lot of those bigger companies grow exponentially over the last few years, and to the point where now the 10 largest stocks currently account for 39% of the value of that index.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. 10 stocks. So almost 40% of your portfolio is just 10 stocks.
Yeah.
That starts to get concerning, and so when we build portfolios, we want to be conscious of that. This is an article actually Russell Price, our chief economist, did on September 24th. But so that's when these numbers are as of. But one thing he points out is that one of the major concerns people have right now is that the S&P 500, the valuations are getting a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
Meaning that relative to the income being distributed, the price you pay is a little bit elevated.
I've heard overvalued.
Yeah, that's a great term for it. Yeah. But it's actually, it's interesting when you look at an equal weighted S&P 500 index, meaning that you do have $1 for each stock, your price earnings ratios are actually come down quite dramatically. A lot of the overvaluation of the S&P 500, the standard index, is based on these 10 huge companies. Why? Because these 10 huge companies are most of them are these tech companies that have a lot of exciting things coming around the corner that may or may not produce a lot of future income. Most of the market's betting they will, right? And that's why you see that accelerated overvaluation. That's a very normal thing to happen. If you have a company that looks like it's going to take off and do really well, people will overvalue that. They'll buy into it more than the valuation itself justifies. And so we don't want to be afraid of an overvalued company. If we were investing just purely based on valuations, we'd go buy a bunch of companies and it would turn out your portfolio would be a bunch of companies in a lot of trouble, right? That they've got decent earnings, but people are like, I don't know how they're going to keep going. And so you got to be careful by, you don't want to just invest based on valuation. But it is, I guess I find all of these numbers very interesting and important to understand as you're building portfolios.
So is the S&P index fund the most aggressive or risky fund to be in?
No, it is aggressive, but it's definitely not the most.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely riskier. I do think that there are times when it's more aggressive, and the more narrow, the more concentrated it becomes. So the more of the weighting or the return is attributed towards those top 10 companies, or a year ago it was even 7 companies that it was tied to as far as the majority of the capital in there, then the riskier it is as far as that particular index and that part of the market. It just so happened that of those top 7, I think 6 of them are all technology companies. And so, at that point, that entire sector becomes extremely aggressive and weighted. And so if you say, well, is it the most aggressive out there? Well, no, probably a tech fund would be more aggressive.
Oh, yeah, I meant on the index of the
but there's a tech index. Right? And so there's, my gosh, in today's world, you can find an index for about everything. Right?
Yeah. For your religious beliefs.
There's indexes for about everything today.
Okay. That's good to know.
So, and all indexes are not created equal.
Yeah.
So,
Like you can have multiple S&P indexes, or is that?
well, yeah. So you have an equal weight index, S&P 500 index. You've got a capital weighted S&P 500 index, which they don't call it capital weighted. They just call it
The S&P
the S&P 500 index.
Okay.
Right. The equal weight they do call equal weight, typically to differentiate it.
Yeah.
So but there's
Good
a
to
bunch
know.
of different indexes, right? There's a 100 index, and so it's the top 100 companies.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different indexes.
Is there a Baxter index?
We're working on it.
Working
Just
on
kidding.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say that. That's probably a huge regulation. No, we are not working on a Baxter index.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so retiring early, becoming financially independent so you can retire early is really based on living a purposeful life. And so FIRE is about freedom to live on your terms, not just quitting work per se. So aligning expenses with values, for example, experiences over material goods, reduces costs and it enhances satisfaction. So what can you do as a young adult to maybe get there early, maybe embrace some minimalism like we spoke about, limit your subscriptions, buy secondhand, lower all those expenses and prioritize travel over leaning over like status symbol stuff like a really expensive car. Mid-career, you can relocate to lower cost areas or downsize your home to free up some savings. You can pursue passions, which you should be doing, I think, at any time, but some people forget because they work so much, and blend that work with the passion and purpose. Pre-retirees plan like mini retirement or phased retirement. And we've talked about this, Rex, in the past of how sometimes rapidly people tend to fall after they retire. And so if you sort of ease into it a bit more, that might be more helpful, working part-time to test the FIRE lifestyle while maintaining some income there. And finally, using geo arbitrage, so living in lower cost regions of countries to stretch out savings, Rex.
Wow, that could be dangerous. Geo cost arbitrage.
Gee, I like that. Yeah,
That's a great name for living in a high crime zone.
Oh, come on.
Or what? I'm not sure what that means. That's what triggers me, right? As I hear that and I think, okay, lower cost geographical area where's the cheapest place to live in the city where the crime is typically the highest?
Usually where people don't want to live.
Right.
Yeah, well, but picking different countries or something where it's cheaper to live.
But same case there too, right? I mean, why are they cheaper countries? Because typically they're not as developed. Typically you don't have the same recreational opportunities, or the crime is higher, or that's typically why it's cheaper. Now, maybe it's just remote and hard to get to, and that's possible.
Yeah.
Right? And so and maybe their cost of goods aren't quite as expensive because they have a plethora of fruits and vegetables and different things like that.
So I live in a van in the Amazon with the internet service, and I make all my money online, but I save money,
You could do it, right? Because you're part of Starlink, and so you've got the internet there, and you should be set. No, I think all of those are great ideas as far as trying to live independent, cutting your costs. It's always interesting because I don't view myself as kind of the elder statesman, right? In a room, and yet you sit here and
I view you as the elder.
Great. Now the gray has purpose. So, but you ask me what should a younger person do, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get preachy here, right? And start telling them when I was a kid.
But you have experience.
I walked uphill both ways.
Yes, you did, and it's wisdom now, and you got to use that wisdom. So let's hear it.
So I think, again, setting those habits early is critically important. If you can keep your costs down, that's absolutely important. I am a huge believer of being, matching your spending with your passions and for experiences over material things. I truly am a big believer in that. Doesn't mean I always can execute perfectly on that myself. I try, right? But certainly we buy material things too. But I think the more you can lean into that, I think the happier you're going to be with kind of the experiences and the memories that you're creating over time.
But
this new. Oh, sorry.
can I
Brian.
argue this just a little bit? Isn't the argument that you buy things to help you build experiences too, right? Like you buy a camping
this
trailer,
new boat, this new
right, or a boat, right? So you can take the family out. Like,
So it depends. Like I don't want to buy a boat to take my family boating. I'll rent a boat
Yeah.
for a day or a week,
yeah,
but I don't want to own a boat. I don't want to maintain a boat. I don't want the cost of a boat.
But if that is your lifestyle, so that you buy your second home on a lake with a boat, so that it's something you do all the time, that might make more sense. Like that is like
And
the
it
life
might.
you want to lead or whatever. But just to do it a few times a year, it might not be.
It depends on what that goal is and what the passion is. But I can absolutely see what you're saying as far as, that you might need a camper, right, to create the experiences repeatable that you want to create and that lifestyle that you want to create. And sometimes you do need to buy those material things with the experiences in mind. It's when you're buying the material things so that your neighbor thinks that you're successful that I take issue with.
Well, that's why I buy them.
Right? Isn't it?
that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe we should go read The Millionaire Next Door again.
Oh, that is a classic. Yes. The Millionaire Mind and The Millionaire Next Door, which is very good. Okay, so now that you've got your fire figured out, you got your plan figured out, and you're on your way. Now you got to protect it because you don't want it to go away. So, the unexpected events, job loss, illness, can absolutely derail your fire plan. So obviously we talk about insurance and emergency funds. Actionable steps is, build the emergency fund. Well, I think that if you're living the fire lifestyle, you've got money in the bank, I'm assuming. So plus emergency fund, I'm not really sure. But security, secure life, disability, umbrella insurance to protect income and assets and plan for long-term care. This has kind of been said, but you got to protect the money you do have, Brandon.
Yeah, and it's kind of been a theme of the last few podcasts we've done. I think is hey, insurance is there for a reason. It's important that we're insured properly, that we're adequately insured while still trying to be lean on insurance, right? Because insurance isn't really a creator of wealth; it's just protecting against those really, the unknown things that could completely derail your financial goals.
Yeah. Rex, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of wealthy individuals have multiple income streams and assets as well. And so I think it's important when you're younger to kind of keep that in mind as to most of them start heavily in one area, whether it's financial markets, real estate, or a business, right? Most of them start heavily in one area and then they branch out into the other two areas as they continue to amass wealth. But that's how you're going to help protect that wealth, is to have it in multiple different areas typically. Mm-hmm. And so if we can get you into all three, I think that's fantastic, as long as they're all three profitable and headed in the right direction and it's something that you're comfortable with. Some certainly come with more liquidity, some come with more liquidity risk, and so there's a lot of different issues with all three of those that you just need to make sure you understand thoroughly. But the earlier we can figure out which one we want to get a little bit of early life tunnel vision in, I think the better off you're going to be.
I hereby encourage you to go live your fire lifestyle. Get it done and go to planwithbaxter.com so these fine young men can help you get there, because you've got to cover your bases. And it's possible, but it could be really hard.
Yeah, could we combine fire lifestyle? Could we find a different acronym that might fit into ascent lifestyle and living your best ascent life?
I think yes, because it is all a balance. And I appreciate you bringing up the other podcast I host, Ascent Life. So if you don't listen to that, go listen to that. Because it is living your best life is, what does that mean? Is it really living the fire life, or is it finding a life full of passion and purpose? And so,
right.
Maybe you need to put a lot of money in the bank so you can find your purpose. I don't know, but
Huge shout out to his other podcast, The Ascent
Thanks.
Life, right? It really is about finding your passion and your purpose in life and what you're trying to do. And I think these two things really marry into each other as far as, financial health and wealth and things like that, as well as using those talents, skills, and tools that you've amassed throughout, whatever life you've had thus far, into what your main purpose in life is.
Yeah. Are you on track for your purpose, Rex?
I think so.
Okay.
You know, I like to think so. I hope so.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure. It's hard to measure if you're on track for a passion.
It's not like a purpose plan measurement thing.
Right. It's not like I have a fire number. I might not have a passion number.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit different.
Brant, what are your passion number? You got a passion number?
Yeah.
6 out of 10?
I agree with Rex. No,
6, 7.
Oh, not again. Yeah.
no, I don't know. I'd like to check in on my life, right? And look at it and say, man, when I look back on this, what am I, is there anything that I'm going to wish I would have done differently?
Yeah.
And I also try and look and say, hey, how many times am I just really feeling that joy in life, and obviously nobody's life is perfect and there's always those frustrating times, but man, I get a lot of joy. And I think ultimately that's what the push is for, right? Is to find those times.
And money is a tool, Rex. And it's not the only thing, because there's other things that are important in life, but money is a big tool that can help you accomplish a lot of things. So,
Absolutely. Money gives you both problems and cures,
but a lot of passion either way.
It definitely is a massive tool towards achieving some of your goals.
Yeah, right on.
So.
This podcast is produced by the Banyan Collective, recorded in our camp trailer, because we like to keep it simple here and fun in the studio, located inside the Monarch Building in the Nine Rails District on historic 25th Street. If you found value in this podcast, which I know you did, you can consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/Banyan. That's BANYAN media.com or buymeacoffee.com/Banyan Media. Watch and subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can see our wonderful, beautiful faces. And you can find us on Facebook at Pines Podcast and on Instagram at Pines_podcast. This has been Through the Pines, reminding you to use yesterday's dollars to finance tomorrow's dreams.